Blog Talk Radio.
Vichiamo Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut Neye Ojirada Medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan Akwamuman Amaruka Atifi Odwirafo. That means greetings to all Afurakani people, Afuraitkaitnut people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is Ojira Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan, Odwirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in to the show once again. A couple of announcements for some of the new people. We have 3 shows on a weekly basis. On Joada, Monday, we have Akhan Nana Som, ancient, authentic Akhan, ancestral religion. On Tuesdays, of course, we have Ojira. On Akwada Wednesdays, we have Egua Marketplace Day, where we showcase an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, or African business, product or service. Typically, we have someone come on and talk about their product, service, business, where they're serving the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut community with products and services that are beneficial to us, but they also embrace and share our ancestral values at the same time. The show on Joada, Mondays, Akhan Nana Som, ancient authentic Akhan ancestral religion. We focus specifically on the expression of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, African ancestral religion, the Akhan expression. On Tuesdays, Benada, Abinada, Ujidada, which is the day we focus on Nana Som in general, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, ancestral religion in general, and how the various aspects of our religious expression affect every aspect of our lives and are intricately and inextricably tied to every aspect of our lives when we want to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions individually and as a community with divine order so we can move forward in life in a harmonious fashion. We deal with that in general in different ways. On Tuesdays, Benada, Abinada. On Monday, Joada, we focus specifically on the Akhan tradition from an authentic perspective. There's a great deal of misinformation being floated around about the Akhan tradition. There's so much misinformation that accurate information is very difficult to find. And of course, we are Akhan as well, so we deal with that information in particular. The same is true also with ancestral religion in general. So this is why we deal with that in a general way, focusing on specific things every Benada, every Abinada Tuesday for Ojira. All of the previous broadcasts, archives, you can find on the channel, the Blog Talk Radio channel, blogtalkradio.com/Odwirafo. We also have saved and uploaded some of our broadcasts as videos, created videos, and uploaded them to YouTube, to our YouTube channel. We are Odwirafo on YouTube as well. ODWIRA, F as in free, O, on YouTube. So you can upload. We've uploaded about 5 of those videos, the Blog Talk Radio broadcast as videos. But then we also have over 50 videos that we had done on Ustream, where we were going through our various publications, examining publications. We have a number of those videos as well, so you can download all of those from the YouTube channel. And there are also links on our regular website. Our major website is odwirafo.com, ODWIRA, F as in free, O.com. You can go to odwirafo.com. You'll find all of our publications and services. So you'll find we have 18 books published. 15 of them are in soft cover, as well as in ebook version. The ebook version of all of our books, which you will find on the Nhoma page. You'll find the ebook versions, the 15 ebook versions on the Nhoma page. You also find 15 soft cover versions that you can order. All of the ebook versions of our books are free downloads. The soft cover versions we do print ourselves on our own printers in-house, in color, We do sell the soft cover versions. They only range between $8 and $11. We have Afuraitkai, the origin of the term Africa. We have Umaranechi, divine law and divine hate. We have Kukutuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction, where we show the cosmological foundation of creation, but also we prove that all of the fictional characters like Jesus and Moses and Muhammad and Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael and Yeshua, Brahman, Yahweh, Allah, all of these characters are fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any race or in any form. We prove that conclusively to show where these characters were manufactured from names and titles of deities from ancient Kemet. That's in the Kukutuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction. We have Ubin Shang, the ancestral summons. We have Anidaho, ancestral summons dealing with our ritual practices like libation and shrine work and spirit possession and nature worship and these various different things and their functionality in the culture. We have Anidaho, which is awareness, where we go into detail about the nature of identity, the actual origin of the term God, its relationship to a title of Amen and Aminet as they function through a specific akyeneboa animal totem, as well as the misinformation that's promoted about the word Negro, Necro, Nigger, Nigga, Negus, Naga. Of course, none of these terms have anything to do with the great God. Negus, Nigger, Naga, Necro, Unger, as people mispronounce it, Niger. None of these terms mean God, and they have nothing to do with divinity. So we go into detail to prove that, to squash all of the nonsense. We have Kokoba, warning, this sexuality, homosexuality was never accepted in ancient Kemet. We go into detail proving these various documents that some of the whites in their offspring would like to promote as this sexuality, homosexuality manifest in our ancient culture. We prove conclusively that is totally inaccurate by going directly into the text and proving that. We also have more means dead, showing that the term more, we trace the etymological origin of the term more and show the cosmological foundations of how that term was birthed, which none of the individuals who identify themselves foolishly as Moors or other people who have been talking about this topic, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, black or non-black, have never given the proper etymology of the term and the cosmology that gave birth to the term. We are the first to have done that, and we've published that. So, of course, you can download the free ebook version, but you can also read the softcover version. We also have Nyokonton, Ra, and Ra'et, showing that the Creator and Create trust, their nature and function, how they manifest in Akhan culture. Odwiraman and Odwiraman, which is Atem and Kepra, two different divinities. We show their nature and function in creation and show how they manifest as Odwiraman and Odwiraman in the Akhan tradition. We also have Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, Kara, Kasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. So again, we're the first to publish accurate information about the etymological origin of the term yoga or yonk, yunka, from yonk, which actually comes from Ankh, the term from Kemet, Kara or Karakra, which is what was corrupted by the whites and their offspring into Kakra, later Chakra. We show these terms actually come from ancient Kemet. Individuals who've been talking about Egyptian yoga and things like that did not have this information when they published their work. So we give an accurate analysis and prove that cosmologically, etymologically, but also cosmologically as well, and go into detail about that. So you have a proper understanding about what is being talked about and all of the misinformation and the pseudo-philosophy that revolves around the pseudo-discipline that is promoted as yoga. So we also have the Okra complex, the soul of Akamfo, talking about the nature and function of the soul. We have Oberima, Afurakani Manhood, which is the book, and we also use that book as a basis of Afurakani Manhood workshops for youth and adults. We have the Ptah, which is an educational curriculum, seven-module curriculum designed to be implemented in 7 sessions of 40 minutes each. If you're for youth as well as adults, if you wanted to share that information with youth or adults, or if you work in a setting as a human services agent or a teacher or dealing with intervention and prevention, whatever kind of work you're doing, You can utilize this curriculum. We also have Akwamu Whole Life Journal, dealing with natural health, melanin, true historical information, cultural information, positive inherited values. We also use that as a basis when we instruct social workers and therapists and so forth on how to incorporate culture in their therapeutic interventions with their clients, with their consumers, who are Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people, because if you do not incorporate Amandre or culture into your therapeutic interventions, you are not serving the client. All you're doing is keeping them on the same level. And then other people also, the white snarl finger, try to convince you to medicate these individuals who are quote-unquote suffering from mental illness, behavioral disturbances, and so forth. So we go into detail about that. We have a training dealing with that called Sankofa Juma. We also have Mate Masiye, the ancestorhood of Nadayal, dealing with ethical life. We have 7 Adinkra symbols that represent ethical existence. We deal with those, and then we show the comparison between the work of Dr. Bobby E. Wright, who was a black nationalist psychologist, made a transition a number of years ago. We show the comparisons between what he taught and the ancient wisdom coming from ancient Afuraitkaitnut. So we have these 15 books. We do have more coming, but we have these right now. Ebook versions are free, softcover versions between $8 and $11, and we also any order of 10 books or more. So if you want to order 10 of the books out of the 15, or 11 or 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever it is, any 10 or more, there's automatic 30% discount. And then for any order of 10 or more. Then in addition to that, we also have the No Quadefo distributors information document, and also video. Some people would like to become distributors of our publications, so you can generate money for yourself by disseminating this information, selling these books. You'd be working as an independent entrepreneur. You would not be working for us. You simply purchase from us wholesale, and then you sell books retail wherever you are to coworkers, friends, family, people you interact with, and so forth. We have that option as well, so people can come to us if they need some means to generate either additional income for themselves or just income in general. So we have that program as well. And then finally, we also have, if you look on our Akongwasuya page, which we will post the link here right now, you'll see on our Akongwasuya page, Akongwasuya is the central institution of learning within Akwamuman, Amaruka, Atifi, the Akwamu Nation in North America. We deal with all the various publications we have, the books, as well as we have over 60 articles we have published. There's about over 50 videos. Most of them are 2 to 3 hours, where we examine publications. And then we have 66 broadcast archives from Blog Talk Radio. They range between 2 and 3 hours as well. So there's a great deal of information where we examine these texts, examine our publications, go into detail, answer questions, and so forth. You can access all that information. Akongwasuya is where we examine that information in detail. We deal with the center of learning, healing, training, employment, entrepreneurship. That's what Akongwasuya is. And we also have recently launched an initiative back a couple of weeks ago where we're working to establish a permanent physical space for our institution. Our institution began in Chicago. We relocated to D.C. a few years ago. We've been renting out spaces whenever we have presentations. What we're doing now is working towards establishing a permanent space so we can expand our activities, our products and services, our free workshops, free presentations, free classes, as well as free publications, and to serve the community on a higher level. So we go into detail about that on the Akongwasuya page, and you can support us acquiring this property for the institution simply by purchasing the books or becoming a distributor. And that way you purchase the books, you receive the books, but at the same time, you're not just receiving books like a normal purchase, but you're also contributing to the establishment of this center in this region. And we also live stream classes at the center so those who don't live in the region can still participate. So we just want to give those announcements real quick. So what we're going to do is we put a couple of links inside the chat room. We put the ABOA NKWA link. That's the first link at the top. And then we're going to also put the Nhoma link so you can see what we were talking about as far as the publication. All right. And we just want to send out one quick message to let everyone know that we are on, and then we'll get started. But you can go to the ABOA NKWA page right now, and you can download just the first part of the information. This is what we're going to deal with, the introductory, quote-unquote, essay on the ABOA NKWA. That's a portion of what we're going to work with right now. We just want to send out this last message, and we'll get started. If anybody has any questions, of course, if you're in the chat room, you must log in order to interact in the chat room with the username. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one very quickly. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, just hit the number 1, and we can see your hand is raised, and we can connect with you. All right, so the name of tonight's show, Upuat, the lone wolf, Obosom, god of war, the hunt, battle, justice, and death. Very important divinity. We're going to talk about his function in creation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people, African people, relationship with this Obosom, a major divinity. There are many children of this Obosom, this fourth in nature, this Ntoro, this Orisha, this Odu. There are many children of this divinity within the community who may not understand their relationship with this force in creation that they were born into the world with. Once you have a greater understanding, then when you begin to communicate and pay more attention to this force and understand the inclinations that you have, the specific kinds of modes of operation that you're drawn to, you have a better understanding of why you have that and how to move forward in harmony with these inclinations that this force in nature has drawn you to, this communication that you've been having. So, the term a general term for wolf or jackal, which is just a canine. The terms wolf and jackal are English terms. They don't really encapsulate the fullness of that species. But there are various forms of canines. So a general term for wolf or jackal in ancient Kemet is Sab. S-A-B, Sab. Sab can mean wolf or jackal. It can also mean judge, like Sab-Ur is a great judge. So when you see this wolf, when you see this Sab, it's a specific kind of animal. It carries a specific kind of energy, and it is an akyeneboa, an animal totem for that divinity, and therefore the divinity, as well as the Unsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors that are connected to that force in creation, they will sometimes send that animal, that akyeneboa, that animal totem, in dreams or sometimes in life to the individual to communicate certain messages. Sometimes it will be in the form of a specific kind of canine, like a gray wolf and so forth in North America, or it may be in the form of a different kind of canine that's in your region. It may be a certain kind of dog. It may be physically you see a stray dog, a certain kind of stray dog, or spiritually in dreams or during ritual work, that animal totem will be sent to communicate a specific message from the ancestral community as well as the Obosom himself. Wolves typically are social animals. They live together and so forth. They hunt together in packs. But sometimes, for one reason or another, a wolf will be separated from the pack. Sometimes it's because of circumstance. Sometimes it's a voluntary, deliberate separation. When they're voluntarily or through circumstance separated, then this wolf, this becomes what in English would be called a lone wolf. They still execute their function for a warrior-type animal, a warrioress-type animal, a hunter, one that goes to battle, one also that deals with justice and death, as you'll see when we get into detail with this divinity. Some of us have been separated from our pack in different ways. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people have been separated from the pack when we were separated from the continent and placed in ships and forced into North America, a forced migration during the Kwesi, the great enslavement, perverse enslavement era. Some of us have been separated once we got to the plantation and separated from our families and sent to other plantations. We're separated as soon as we were born from our mother and sent and sold away. Some of us have gone through a voluntary separation because we realize that people are engaged in self-destructive behavior, embracing the culture of their whites and their offspring, and that is repulsive to us. So we naturally make a separation, some form of separation. So it manifests as this inclination towards living in harmony with order, making sure every thought, intention, and action is in harmony with order, and if we can't achieve that within the specific group that we are a part of at that particular time, there's a voluntary separation. Or sometimes there's a forced separation, a forced exile, because certain individuals may be engaged in self-destructive behavior, even if it's self-destructive behavior manifesting as criminality, or if it's non-criminal but it's simply self-destructive, they will force that separation. So whether it's you making that decision, following your own crowd, your soul, your divine consciousness, your krawa, to make that separation, or you're pushed into that separation, either way, you go from being part of the pack to one of the lone wolves. But there's nothing wrong with that. Now, wolves are typically born blind. The wolf cubs are born blind. The pups are born blind. They're born deaf. And they're protected by the mother for a certain period of time until they can gain their sight, their hearing, and begin to hunt with the pack. Some of us have been born in a similar situation, of course, in the Western Hemisphere. Born blind, born deaf. We've gone through a certain period. We've been protected by our ancestresses and ancestors to the extent that we were open enough to begin to make some connections, some assessments, and realize there was a problem, and those inclinations that welled up within us, these ancestral urges, they moved us towards embracing reality no matter what the cost. The strongest urge that we have is living in harmony with order. So those who are children of Upuat, this divinity, they're naturally strongly drawn to executing every thought, intention, and action with divine order to the extent that if they have to be separate, then they're going to be separate. But they're going to execute their function. And that natural inclination towards war, that natural inclination towards the hunt. This is a wolf. Hunting, warrior type, attacking the enemy, hunting the enemy down, killing the enemy, divinity of battle, divinity of justice, divinity of death, one who navigates between the physical world and the spirit realm. No fear of death because this individual governs the death process. So when you have a warrior, one who hunts the enemy down, has that only inclination, that's what they live for. They're a lone wolf. They're not making any communications with the pack. You can't determine when they're going to make their next move, when they're going to hunt, when they're going to recognize justice has been scuttled and destroyed, and they're going to move forward to engage and exact justice and hunt down the enemy, kill the enemy, take the enemy to the death realm, to the realm of death. People who have that natural inclination, you can't determine when they're going to move because they are only communicating as a lone wolf with their Akra. This is a natural inclination for children of this divinity that they're born with, male or female, come into the world with, assigned to them pre-incarnation. There are hundreds of thousands of lone wolves in the Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut community with a natural urge written into their craft, written into their akrawa, written into their soul to exact justice, hunt the enemy down, kill the enemy, destroy the enemy, and open the way, Upuat, open the way to the realm of death for the enemy. So let's get into who these lone wolves are, these children of Upuat. First, we're going to talk about the akyeneboa. If you go to the ABOA NKWA page on the website, we're going to check that out. And we put that link up there on the Odwirafo website, ABOA NKWA. And we just want to touch on these animal totems, what they mean, and then we're going to get into who this deity is and why thousands of our people have this inclination. And once they understand that, then they will move on. ABOA NKWA, ABOA in Akhan means animal, NKWA means life. Same as Onk in ancient Kemet. This is where NKWA in Akhan comes from, it means life. And ABOA means animal, just like ABOA in ancient Kemet means animal as well. So this is why we term, and this is specific practice, a ritual practice that we engage in Akwamuman as well as Fantiman in North America. Ritual movement. We remove our physical bodies in the forms of our ancestral animal totems for strengthening, stretching, toning, balancing, offense, defense, and focus. So we want to get into what undergirds the practice. So the first part of this section on the page talks about the medutu that make up the names. We prove that ABOA, meaning animal in Akhan, and ABOA, meaning animal in ancient Kemet, is the same term. We prove that NKWA, life, and Onk in ancient Kemet, life, are the same term. We also show the root of ABOA, meaning animal. Ab also means heart. Ab also means dance. Ab also means thirst or desire. So the heart is what animates us. Dance is what we use to animate ourselves. That's also thirst or desire animates us. That's also as well, and this is why it's the basis of ABOA, meaning animal life, animation. So we go into detail about that. Then we go into detail about NKWA and Onk. We show an image of the Onk. We show an image of one of the NKWA or Akua dolls, fertility dolls. We have links to that. We go into detail about that. So what we want to get into the nature of the akyeneboa. So as we said, ABOA NKWA is a ritual means by which we animate our life force and life focus by using our bodies as instruments to align with our akyeneboa animal totems. Our akyeneboa, our animal totems, are inherited by blood directly from our patrilineal and matrilineal blood circles, and ultimately from our nananon unsamanfo, ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, who first experienced Akhan or spirit possession by those Obosom or deities who govern the sacred animals comprising the various akyeneboa. Only Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people have authentic akyeneboa. Other people claiming to be children of the crow and children of the eagle and all this, that's just imitation. They have no connection to the Obosom, and the Obosom are the ones whose energy governs these different species of animals, and those classes of animals also are in alignment with different groups of human beings who carry the same energy complex. So therefore, if we're under the same energy complex of a specific divinity, certain Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people will be connected to the energy of a certain Obosom that governs the crow. So the crow carries that energy as well, and a certain groups of plants carry that same energy, as well as mineral life. So all of us are all in the same class. And then these animals and this plant life and mineral life and so forth become sacred plants, animals, and minerals to our specific group. We talk about the Obosom and Nananom Nsamafo send the akyeneboa to us to communicate messages that we need in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with Inyamewa, Inyame, and Sheshe, the Supreme Being's order, divine order. The akyeneboa can be sent to us in dream or sent to us across our paths in Iriase, the world, at critical junctures within our lives. Critical juncture. When we need to operate, when we need to move, when we need to act. When we align with our akyeneboa, we are aligning with the energy of the animal totems we have received intergenerationally and transcarnationally through successive reincarnations. From our direct blood, Nananom Nsamanfo, our ancestresses and ancestors. Because these akyeneboa govern our patriclans and matriclans, we are able to replenish the energy within their related shrines that exist within our honam, our bodies, our muscle groups, organs, and organ systems, and our sunsum spirits by ritual invocation. So we can invoke them ritually. We can align our physical bodies and our spirit bodies with the energy of these animal totems because they're part of that same class that we are part of, connected to a certain divinity. Just like you can eat certain foods and get energy from the food, and you may need iron, or you may need zinc or magnesium, or you may need some kind of fiery energy from a hot, pungent food or so forth to stimulate or restore a deficiency that's developed within your system, spiritually, energetic-wise, as well as mineral-wise. You can receive the energy and extract the energy from the animal totems, the akyeneboa, to stimulate and replenish the energy within your spirit body as well. So we go into detail about that. We say ABOA NKWA is the means by which we move the body in the forms of our ancestral akyeneboa animal totems in order to invoke the Obosom. ABOA NKWA supports our physical health, our Ahoaden and spiritual balance, Adenen, as we work to align and realign our Okrawa, our soul, divine consciousness, and fundamentally realigning with the Supreme Being's order, divine order. So that's when you're looking at this, any divinity that manifests in the form of an animal, they have an animal's head or animal's body, or that's part of the iconography. We're talking about akyeneboa animal totems. These specific animals are like batteries that carry the energy of that divinity. So when you see that animal and you interact with that animal physically and spiritually, if you have that animal is in your presence, you can pick up on the energy of that animal as well as spiritually. If ritually the animal is sent to you, that animal is like a battery and a vehicle, a vessel for the Tumi, the power of the Obosom that governs. So, and the same is, of course, that's true with all of them, including Upuat, the divinity, the wolf divinity that we're dealing with. So, we said that Upuat, a wolf or a jackal, is called Sab. As a general term, also, Sab also means to judge. Now look in the Akhan tradition. The term for a jackal or a wolf or a canine is sakraman. Sakraman. The general word for a dog or a canine is akraman. Then you have sakraman, where they talk about a jackal or a wolf. Sometimes some will say that it's sare so kraman, which is contracted into sakraman. Sare meaning grass, so means upon. So the akraman, or the specific canine or dog that is Sade so upon the grass, that moves upon the grass. And this is why they say sakrama. But sa also means war. Osafo means warrior, one of the people folk who engage in sa, which is warfare. So sa kraman is the war of kraman, or the war canine. Just like osa berima is the warrior of sa oberima, male or man of war, osa berima. Just like sakraman is the war akraman, or the war jackal, war wolf, war canine. So what does that have to do? What is a war canine? Not only going to war, but also we said sab in ancient Kemet as a general term for the jackal or the wolf, also is the term for to judge. When you go to war, that's a judgment. Sa means to go to war, to wage war. You're making a discrimination. You're separating what's correct, what's incorrect, what's in order, what's out of harmony with order, and you move to rectify the situation. All war is discrimination, proper discrimination. When you wage war in harmony with divine order, just like your immune system and lymphatic system wage war against the cancerous cells, that is an expression of discrimination, proper discrimination, delineation, demarcation. It's judgment. Sa, meaning war in Akhan culture, and Sab, meaning judge or judgment, also being the term for jackal or wolf in ancient Kemet. Sa, Kraman is the Sa, canine in Akhan culture. This is what we're dealing with. Now there's a term, another term in Akhan culture called Odwiraman. Odwiraman. Akwamu means a road or a way or a path. And then Obwe, B-U-E, Bwe, or Obwe, that means to open, to disclose, to reveal. So Odwiraman means opener of the road, or opener of the way, opener of the path. Very important title, because number one, it's associated, the Obosom that governs Akwesida, or Sunday. It's a Mbrane, or praise name for children who are born on Sunday, or Akwesida. The major Okay, so the call dropped for a second. Somebody send a message in the chat room. Let us know you can hear us again. And for those who have been on Blog Talk for a while, you know that sometimes the calls drop, and then we get right back on. So anybody in the chat room, just type in yes. Let us know if you can hear. And if you can, then we'll move forward. We don't want to move forward without knowing. So anybody who's logged in, you have to be logged into the chat room to enable to, in order to connect. So, and also if somebody on the phone line, if you can hit the number 1, just let us know. Hit the number 1. Okay, so we can see that you all can hear. Okay, everybody can hear. Cool. All right. So we talk about Odwiraman. Odwir means to open, disclose, and so forth. Odwiraman means to open the road, open the way, opener of the way. The major Obosom governing the Ovria, the sun, based on the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. Sunday, or the day of the sun, is Awusi Day, or Awusida, Akwesida, Sunday. Asar, when he's in connection with Ra, as Asar, Ra, operates through the sun. That's the major divinity of that day on the male side. And Etsi, which is a form, the Coptic form of Aset, is the female Obosom when she's in connection with Ra. So Awusi and Etsi, or Asi and Etsi. Asar and Aset, governing Sunday. Of course, when they operate through the moon, they're called Ajo and Ajwa, and that's Joada, that's Monday. And Kemet called Asar Ya, Asar operating through the moon. Asar in connection with Ra, Asara, or Awusi and Akhan culture, operating through the sun, and Etsi, Aset, Raet, Etsi, Awusi and Etsi, Asar and Aset, operating through the sun, that's Sunday. People born on that day, one of the Mrane or praise names is Odwiraman. That's not the only time that title is used, but that's one of the praise names for somebody born on Sunday. This is why there's a connection between the divinity Upuat, this wolf divinity, the Sakramai, connected with Sunday. We're going to get into that. But the root Krama in Akhan culture from Sakramai, but Krama means wild, fierce, hot, attacking, and so forth. That's what Krama means. And then you have the Sakramai, which is the name of the jackal, the name of the wolf, the hot, fierce, fiery, Akramai, canine of Osa, of war. Now, when the wolves attack, very typically they'll attack in packs, as we said. They'll take down bison. They'll take down elk. They'll take down moose. Much greater than they are, much bigger than they are, much more powerful than they are, but they attack them in packs, and they rip them apart and take them down. They are hunters. They are warriors. They are hot, fierce, wild, quote-unquote, Krama. This is what they are. Even when one is separated from the group, and they must survive, and they don't have a pack to work with, but they still must eat, they still must survive. Sometimes wolves will feed, and then because of their success with regard to the hunt, very often their attacks are not successful immediately, maybe about 15% of the time. So they know that if they don't get this meal, they may not be eating for another few days. And sometimes they will load up on food, fill themselves up, and then because they know they won't be eating for the next few days, because their hunts may not be successful, they may not be able to track anything down until they migrate around. They move around sometimes 70, 80 miles per day, searching for food and so forth. If they become a lone wolf, then they have to be focused. They have to be able to survive. They still are a warrior. They're still fierce. They're still fiery. Kramai, Kramai, warrior, Kramai. They must be able to attack. They must be able to survive and take down the enemy, but they also must be able to protect themselves. And we're in the same position. We're in a position where we've been separated from the pack, from the larger group. And we have enemies that are around us. So in the Akhan tradition, in the Adinkra symbolism, you have Adinkra symbols dealing with that. You have Atanfwo, the enemies, Atwa, Meho, Ashia, the enemies or adversaries are all around me. And it's pointing to the fact that this has been going on from time immemorial. So they say, Yen Chiri me, Ye Yendo me, you, they hate me, they do not love me. Efri Tete is from time immemorial. This notion of individuals or entities who are not in harmony with us, this is nothing new. It is Efri Tete, from time immemorial. Atanfwo Atwa, Ashia, Miho Ashia. The adversaries or the enemies are all around. But then you have Adinkra symbolisms that follow that up. Inya Akokoduro, have courage, have heart. It doesn't matter that the enemies are all around you. It doesn't matter that this has been going on from time immemorial, from ancient time. Efri Tete, the enemies are all around me. Inya Akokoduro, have courage, have a heavy heart, chest, strong chest, stout chest, powerful chest. Have courage, have heart. And just like this Sakramai, when they're a lone wolf, it doesn't matter that they're surrounded by the enemy. They are they have heart, and they survive because they hunt. That's their nature. They hunt down the enemy. They don't have any pack to communicate with. They don't need to communicate with the pack. The bison doesn't know when they're coming. The elk doesn't know when they're coming. The moose doesn't know when they're coming. The other animals don't know when they're coming. They're a lone wolf. They don't see the pack. They don't hear the pack. All they know is that all of a sudden they get hit. They get hunted down. They get taken down. This is the nature of that sakraman, of that lone wolf. And when you're surrounded by enemies who are constantly attacking our people, then there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of sakraman fall in the community. And once they know what their nature is and why they have these inclinations, they will move as sakraman. And nobody can stop sakraman fall because they don't communicate. They don't broadcast their movement. When they're ready to hunt the enemy, they hunt the enemy. When they're ready to kill the enemy, they kill the enemy. When they exact justice, they exact justice. And there's no communication, there's just movement. You can't get in between the communication between sakramanfo and their own cry. The Obosom won't allow you to interfere with that communication. The Nananoman Samanfo will not allow you to interfere with that communication. The European little pseudo-psychic projectors and pseudo-spiritualists, whether they're Hindu or Arab or European or Asian or white, Hispanic, pseudo-Native American, it doesn't matter. They cannot interfere with the communication between your own sum and your own cry. And when your cry directs you as a sakramanfo to move, to hunt the adversaries who are all around you, the enemies who are all around us, nobody knows when that communication will happen, and nobody knows when the person will move. And this is why the sakramanfo is dangerous to the social order, to the perverse social order, because nobody can track or predict when the sakramanfo will move. All they need to know is who they are and recognize and value who they are. So we talk about Odwiraman, the opener of the way. Obwe, B-U-E, bwe, or obwe means to open. The root of bwe, B-U, B-U-E, is B-U, which means not only to bend or to break or to open or to unfold or fold down, to separate or disclose, but it also means to count. It also means to judge, to make a judgment. So now you have Obwe Kwainfo, Obwe Kwain, opener of the way, but it's also Obwe Ubu, meaning to judge. Now let's look at the titles of the divinity in ancient Kemet, of this Sakraman, of this Sa or Sab Kraman, this wolf. The term Upuat is Upu and Wat, or white. Upu means to judge, but it also means to open, just like Bu or Ubue, to judge, but it also means to open. Kwain in Akhan means road or way or path. Wat or white in ancient Kemet means a road or way or a path. So Upuat or Upuat means the opener of the path, opener of the road, opener of the way, but also judge of the path, judge of the road, judge of the way. Upuat or Upuat is where we get Ubue Kwain or Ubu Kwain in Akhan. It is the same title dealing with the same judge, the same force in creation associated with the Obosom that governs the day of the sun. So then you'll see that this particular divinity is associated with Asar in ancient Kemet as well. Same divinity, same name, the same function, same divinity. And when you look at Upuat, you'll see that he's on the standard leading the king. people walking with standards, poles, and then on top of the standard you have, one of the standards you have the symbol, the sculpture of the jackal, of the wolf, leading the king into warfare, opening the way to attack the enemy, opening the way to exact justice on the enemy, opening the way to hunt down the enemy for the protection of the community. A single wolf, a single jackal, a lone wolf, leading the way, opening the way. So when you look at information about Upuat, and you look at information dealing with his functioning creation, it's not only dealing with the warfare on the battlefield as a scout, sending this warrior-type divinity out, this animal out, even just physically going into warfare, not only with horses. Of course, we also use elephants. Of course, we also had trained lions with us in ancient Kemet going to war, also sending out wolves and so forth. So not only that physically, and then you have the standard with the wolf, the lone wolf, but then you also have he's an opener away to the death, the state of death, the realm of death. He deals with the opening of the mouth of the deceased. He deals with burial. What does the Sakramine have to do with burial? Why does Upuat govern the burial space? Why is he, even before Kinti Amintu, the first of the Westerners in Abju and so-called Abydos, you had Upuat there nearly 5,000 years ago from the beginning. What does he have to do with that? If you look at Sakramine in Akhan culture and just the Sakramine, the wolf, and canines in general around the world, you'll see that when they kill, they will also take the carcass that they kill and they'll bury the carcass. And they'll preserve that carcass, and then they'll go back and dig the carcass back up, dig up the food, and then they'll feed on it again and utilize it for what they need their nourishment for later. So they're actually engaged in the process of burial and resurrection. So then you see Upuat and the other related jackal divinity, Anpu, that they mispronounced, Anubis, dealing with embalming, dealing with mummification, dealing with burial, but also Upuat opening the way to the ancestral realm, opening the way for the person to resurrect, their spirit to move forward so they can open the mouth and open the eyes. And so you have Upuat, and one of the instruments used to open the mouth and open the eyes is the eyes of Upuat, also called the Sab-Ur, for the deceased individual. He helps to navigate the gateway to the ancestral realm for the deceased individual. For the deceased individual who lived in harmony with order, Upuat opens the way, helps to be a navigator, guides them from the after-death state when their spirit separates from the body through the various aspects of the duat so they can move towards the ancestral realm, the community of ancestresses and ancestors, without getting caught up in being earthbound and stuck and being assaulted by other discarnate spirits who could not make it to the ancestral realm and are still earthbound, hanging around, causing all kinds of problems. He's one of the male forces that acts as a quote-unquote guide canine or quote-unquote guide dog for the blind, so to speak, to lead you to the ancestral community and get you there without you being caught up or being trapped, earthbound. That's for people who lived in harmony with order. He opens the way. Obuequine, Upuat. He opens the way to the ancestral community. For those who are out of harmony with order, he still opens the way to the death state, the after-death state, because he's a hunter, he's a warrior, he's a divine killer. He deals with that. So he leads you to the death state. Enemies are all around me. So then he attacks as the lone wolf and makes sure the enemies are no longer around us because he kills the enemy on his own volition, animated by his relationship with his own Nkra with his own Nananom Nsamanfo and moves forward and takes the person out and then buries the individual. He seeks out, penetrates, gets through defenses. If he sees a bison, if he sees a moose, sees elk with great horns, much larger than him, sees them in a group, he has to strategize, he has to study, he has to be stealth, he has to make sure he makes the right decisions, but he's focused, and when he moves, and he takes the enemy out. He takes the prey out successfully and then buries the prey. And then he can go back and dig that up, show what he has done. People who have that same energy complex have that natural inclination. Up until this point, they may have been conditioned to believe that that inclination, there's something wrong with that inclination. We're here to say that's a divine inclination that was encoded within you, and you have a function within the community. So let's get into some more cosmology dealing with Upuat. So when you read about Upuat, and now you have a better understanding about his function, this is why when you read any information, basic information about this divinity, you say Upuat, ancient canine divinity worshipped in Upper Kemet. There was a procession of Upuat. He preceded Alsar into the mysteries of the quote-unquote the deceased mystery dealing with the opening of the mouth and opening of the eye. He's the opener of the ways, opener of the roads, dealing with the underworld in the so-called Book of the Dead, Pert Imheru, or the Book of the Amduat. He leads the deceased through the underworld and guards over them on their perilous journey. But he was also thought to act as a scout for the army, opening a path to allow them to proceed. There's a specific inscription in Sinai that goes back over 2,500 years, talking about Upuat. He accompanies the king when the king is hunting, and he's called the one with the sharp arrow, was more powerful than the deities. So we're talking about, that's their assessment of that. We're talking about that divinity itself. When that akyeneboa, that animal totem, moves, communicates, and connects with us, people who are children of Upuat, children of Odwiraman, and they move you in that direction to hunt, see the enemy, hunt down the enemy, kill the enemy, exact justice on the enemy, bury the enemy, and move forward, open the way, open the gateway, leading as a scout for the king, for the queen mother, for the community to move forward in harmony because you've already scouted out the area as a lone wolf. Let's look at what happens in the after-death state, since we're dealing with Sakramai and we're dealing with the wolf who buries and deals with burial. And you'll find out when you read about Upuat, and it says he's the chief guardian of the giant cemeteries at the sacred city of Abju. This is the reason this is what we're dealing with. Why does he open the way not only as a scout for the army? He's the first one to be sent out into the wilderness, navigating his way through the wilderness, through the uncharted area where the enemy is going to be, scouts out to see where they are, see what their weaknesses are, as a lone wolf, so he can take an assessment so he knows when to strike, how hard to strike, and then he makes his move. He's not only on that side of it physically, but then spiritually, dealing with the opening of the way to the ancestral realm. The only way he can move in that fashion is if he understands and has a natural inclination to move in harmony where he doesn't fear his movement. If his movements lead to certain attacks, leads to a mishap here and there, he doesn't fear that. He doesn't fear death. He couldn't fear death if he moves in the fashion that he moves. The reason he doesn't fear death in reality, because this is the Obosom that has to do with the navigation of the physical realm into the realm of death. He governs death. So he fears nothing. And when you have a lone wolf that does not fear death, so much so because he understands that he is a child of the Obosom that governs death, then there's no fear in him. And his inclination to hunt any enemy that attacks our community. There's no fear. His inclination is so powerful, and he feeds that inclination because he has no fear. This is why he has no fear. So we're going to look at what happens in the after-death state in the Akhan tradition. If you look at, for example, a specific dictionary written in the 12,800 so-called 1800s, Asante Fanti Dictionary, when Basel missionaries were in the region of the Akhan people, Equiapim region, and they started compiling a dictionary, and they would ask the people, what do these words mean? So not only did they get the whole list of words, this is a 600-page dictionary. You can download it from archive.org, and we'll put that link in the chat room right now, archive.org, Asante Fanti Dictionary, the Twi language, TWI. So not only did they just compile the list of words, 600-page dictionary, sitting there talking to our people, but then you will also find in the dictionary quotes when they ask specific questions to our people at that particular time. And so now their responses are in italics, in quotes. These responses have been fossilized for the past 140-plus years. And now we can read what our people were saying to the Odwirafo over 140 years ago when they asked them, well, what does this mean? So when they asked them about Asamai or Asamindo, the ancestral realm, the realm of the Asamainfo, Samain meaning ancestral spirits, discarnate spirits. Sometimes it's called Asamindo, sometimes it's called the Asamain. They say, okay, well, Asamain means the land of the ancestral spirits, the realm of the deceased. But then they would ask, well, what else does that mean? Can you give us some more information about that other than just that's what it means? So this is the response of one of our ancestors. This response is fossilized 140 years ago. We're going to read it the way they said it in Tree, and then we'll read the specific English translation. So it says, when the person, of course, dies, he goes into the world of the Unsamanfo, the spirits. Wose, Asamai, Waha Yi, ABOA NKWA, Waha, Woyare Wo, Riase, Hayi Cheche, Mfrishia, Ansana, Waho, Aye Woden, Waha, Nawoto, Dea, Inde, Ebeye, Se, Asrambi, Nansabi, Nawoho, Aye Woden. So what the person said, we wanted to repeat that for those Unsamanfo who spoke the language and only speak that language. Our Unsamanfo, your Unsamanfo who still speak the language, and when they made their transition, they spoke the language and they never spoke English. So when they hear you speaking their ancient language, it stimulates them and pulls them closer to you, and it also stimulates your own ancestral memory. And the translation is, it is said in the realm of the dead there are kings as well as subjects. If you were sick in this world for a long time, you will be restored to health after 3 years. But one who died in battle or by accident will be well again in a short time, perhaps in a month or so. So when somebody not only dies by accident, but dies in a battle, that's considered an honorable death. And even if they were sick or if they were injured or whatever it is, if they died in battle, then they will be restored within a month or so. If somebody was sick and died and they had a long-term illness and they make their transition, then within about 3 years, the ancestral spirit regains its balance spiritually in the ancestral realm. But if somebody died in battle, if they were waging war against the enemy, the adversary, even if they were injured, they will be restored quickly within a month or so. This is why in the Akhan tradition, when somebody makes their transition, yes, there will be a funerary service on the 8th day. If they died on Kwesi Sunday, then there'll be a funerary service and ancestral observance the following Kwesi on the same day of Krada, soul day, that they made their transition. But then on the 40th day, there will be an ancestral observance. And also on the 80th day, and then the 1-year anniversary. But that 40th day, we give about 40 days. And this is why we have, one of the reasons we have a 42-day ritual calendar. We'll give about 40 days for that newly departed spirit, that ancestral spirit, that Afurakani, to still communicate with the family, still visit family members, comfort them to a certain extent, get them used to this new condition that they're going to be in, this new relationship dynamic that you have now. But once they get to that point where people begin to get accustomed to and adjusted to this new dynamic, then it's time for the ancestral spirit after that 40th day to make their transition to be firmly planted in the ancestral realm. So they spend most of their time interacting with the Nananom, Nsamanfo, and Asamanfo, their ancestresses and ancestors who made their transition before them. And when they move in that direction and become settled in the ancestral community in Asamanda, then they're not just hanging around earthbound, depressed and anxious and angry and so forth because they felt like they died before they should have, and they're still hanging around and causing other people who are still living in the world a great deal of anxiety, and they don't understand where all of this anxiety is coming from. And then they start feeling depressed. People are still, the surviving family members, feeling depressed all the time, having panic attacks and so forth, and going to the doctor and getting medication, going to therapists and everybody else, getting misinformation and foolish diagnoses and more medication that's even more destructive, when all the ancestral spirit had to do was to move on. And if we had established an ancestral shrine to facilitate a communication, but also to help make that individual understand they need to move on, then they wouldn't remain earthbound, they would move on. But those who actually move on because they were grounded when they were here, and they were mature and intelligent, they'll spend that 40-day period making the connections, saying those last quote-unquote goodbyes to the community, and then they will make their transition and become firmly settled in the ancestral realm, and they will still communicate with the family members periodically during ancestral celebrations, during other festivals and so forth, also when people are pouring libation at home, and also when certain issues arise where their influence is needed, where their advice is needed, where their direction is needed. They will visit in dreams, they will visit during the day, they will show up at certain critical moments to make sure that you get the information you need to get, or you're dissuaded from engaging in a certain activity that will lead to something self-destructive. But still, primarily, they're rooted and settled, and most of their interaction is with the ancestral community. Those people who are mature, that's what they do. Those people who died in battle, that was an honorable death, even if they were injured within that 40-day period, they are restored to full balance spiritually. They're not spiritually weak. They're restored to full balance, and when they move into the ancestral realm, they're fully settled, fully restored. So when a sacrament falls, when somebody is obwekwan, when somebody is a lone wolf, somebody is naturally inclined to hunt the enemy, the adversaries who are all around us, wage war, engage in battle, hunt the enemy down, kill the enemy who otherwise will be holding the community hostage. They don't fear death. They know what happens after death. They know exactly what happens. We communicate with our Nananom and Samanfo. We're not fearful. It's not unknown. We communicate with them on a regular basis. And we know what happens even if we're injured in the process. We don't fear that consequence because we know we will be restored. When our people were on plantations and they organized to wage war against the whites and their offspring, they didn't fear death. In the ancestral culture, in Akhan culture and across the board, in Afuraka, Afuraikai, wherever we are. We would say if you want to understand the nature of the ancestral realm, Asamando, consider the dream state. And we've taught that before, but this is clear. When you understand the dream state and your body is laying in the dark room where there's no sound, no light, and no movement, but you're having experiences. You're seeing luminous images. You're interacting with individuals. You're having experiences. If somebody walked into the room, they wouldn't be able to see the experiences that you're having, but you are having experiences, and when you wake up, you can describe what you saw, what you heard, what you felt, and so forth. But if your eyes are closed and it's dark and there's no movement and no sound in the room, then that is your spirit engaging in activity, engaging other entities. Sometimes it has to do with conditioning and memories and so forth that you're pulling up so you can learn something from. Sometimes you're dealing with your nananom unsamampo, your ancestresses and ancestors, but you are having experiences that you can identify, that you can describe to other individuals. The same in the after-death state. The body is in a dark place. It's quiet, dark, no sound, no light, no movement, but your spirit is interacting with the nananom unsamampo, with the ancestresses and ancestors who are honorable, spiritually cultivated, as well as those ancestresses and ancestors who are good people, as well as you can interact or come in contact with individuals or entities who are criminal, related or unrelated. But we understand the differences between those things. So when our people made our transition, we weren't worried about that transition. As long as we were doing what we needed to do on earth in harmony with order, the only fear we had is if we engaged in disorder and didn't live in harmony with our own cry, our own soul, our own divine consciousness, the divinity that has been assigned to us by Inyamewa Inyame, because we would set up our own negative consequences. Just as if you eat the wrong kinds of food and then you set yourself up to be sick the next day. The only fear you have is, I know I shouldn't have eaten that because I know my stomach will be hurting tomorrow night. But you don't have that fear when you make the right decisions. We don't have any fear of the after-death state because we interact with Nsamampo on a consistent and a periodic basis. So when our people waged war against the whites and their offspring here in the Western Hemisphere, freed ourselves from plantations, ships, and so forth, killed the enemy, hunted the enemy down, not negotiating with the enemy, not protesting against enslavement, but killing the enemy on the plantation and burning him down, his wife, family, the whole plantation down, children, and freeing ourselves from the plantation. And if somebody was to become caught up or killed in the process, one of our people, one of the warriors, one of the warrioresses, we wouldn't be concerned at all, because we know as soon as we died, our spirit would return to our ancestral village. We knew that within a few days, within a few weeks, spiritually we will be restored. So we will be restored spiritually, energetically, and our spirits will be right back in Afuraikai, amongst our ancestral community, which the whites and their offspring have no capacity to engage with. As we said before, just like you have a magnet on the table with the same polarities facing and they repel one another, the whites and their offspring are repelled from Asamando, from the ancestral realm. They are earthbound, discarnate, wayward spirits that hang around other white and other perverse, wayward spirits. They have no capacity to interact with the Nananom Nsamampo in the ancestral realm. So we knew if we made our transition, if we were killed in the process, no problem, because we'll be right back free amongst our own Nsamampo. If we didn't get killed in the process, no problem, because we would be freeing ourselves right here on earth. And we would understand even if we were injured, we would be restored. So we had no fear of the after-death state. We had no fear of the ancestral realm. We looked forward to the ancestral realm. And as long as we were here, we were going to make sure we were going to do everything we could to establish freedom and sovereignty and defend that sovereignty. And just as our ancestresses and ancestors established that precedent here in the North America, in the Western Hemisphere, we have that within our blood circle. It's not abstract. We have ancestresses and ancestors directly in our blood circle who've affected that, and some of us were those people. Everybody who's living in this country right now has lived before. None of us are new. This is not our first life in this world. We have returned through Bebra, through reincarnation. We have been here before, and some of us were some of those individuals who waged war against the Akyeneboa, the spirits of disorder, the whites and their offspring, slaughtered them, massacred them, and freed our people from enslavement. And some of us have returned. And some of us have that natural inclination to move on that process again. And wherever we see injustice, we're naturally inclined to move against it. And those who are children of ODWIRA, Upuat, moving as a lone Sab or a lone Sakraman or a lone wolf, moving towards war, moving to hunt down any enemy who manifests any criminal behavior. We have that natural inclination. We have no fear of death. We're children of the Obosom that actually governs the death process. So we embrace Owu. We embrace death. We have no fear. And there are hundreds of thousands of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people right now in America and outside of America who have that same energy complex, who have had those inclinations since birth, since before birth. Now you understand what your inclinations are and how it's divinely ordered for you to embrace and move according to the inclinations that have been written into your cry, into your soul, into your okrawa. Somebody on the phone line or anybody in the chat room has a question or a comment, of course you can post in the chat room if you are logged in with a username. If you don't have a username, you're going to have to, you can create one very quickly. If somebody is on the phone line and has a question or a comment, you can just hit the number 1, and we'll connect with you that way. Okay, so we want to pull up another link real quick. We're pulling it up right now. Just give us a second. And this is just another link dealing with Upuat. And of course, there's a difference between, and we mentioned briefly, the difference between Upuat and Anpu, who are two different canine divinities, jackal-headed divinities. Okay, we'll put this link in the chat room real quick. Now, the key here is when you're reading this information, of course, now you have some foundation about the ancestral akyeneboa animal totems, have some understanding about the actual relationship between literally the term Sa, which means jackal, Sa, Kramine, which means the Sa, Kramine or the Sa, canine in Akhan culture, which is the jackal or the wolf, ODWIRA, which means opener of the path, opener of the road, opener of the way, but also means judge of the way. And then Upuat is ODWIRA in Akhan. Upuat in ancient Kemet meaning opener of the way, but then Upu also means judge and so forth. Sab, the general term for jackal, also means judge. Now you have these actual terms, the same terms in Kemet that you find in our Akhan tradition, dealing with the same energy complex. And then you understand that people have that energy complex. Now you have a greater understanding. And then when you read these links, then you have a better understanding of, or you'll be able to read between the lines whenever you read any information about ancient Kemet, any deity, any aspect of the cosmology, you get the real information from studying your own ancestral culture, whether it's the Akhan tradition, Yoruba, Igbo, Vodun, whatever it is. You study that culture, and the number one way to study that culture is to establish an institution of learning within your dwelling place, and that central institution of learning within your dwelling place is your ancestral shrine, your Nsama Nkombre. When you establish a relationship with your Nananon Nsamafo, your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors who are assigned to you by the Supreme Being to assist you with your development. There are a certain number of them who are assigned to you to assist you. When you establish that relationship with them on a regular basis, then they give you insight, not only at the shrine, but when you dream, when you're going through the course of the day, they will feed you information. They will give you insight into what the culture and the cosmology really is about, and the different inclinations you have when you align with your own crop, the different experiences you have with animal totems, the different experiences you have when you interact with other individuals of different, in our community, who are children of different Obosom, as well as those who are children of the same Obosom. You begin to learn and see how nature is operating and how the Asunsum, or the spirits in nature, the Obosom, operate in harmony. And then you begin to understand the cosmology from an experiential basis. Then when you read things and people are talking about this deity does this and this deity does that and this is what this means, you can read between the lines and you have the real information. And you have even greater insight than, of course, anything that they've written. They can barely scratch the surface of what's going on. So when you read in a text such as this one, the link we put up here, talking about Upuat, and they spell it a little bit differently. Hold on, that's going to give you a different, that was a different one. I'm going to give you a different one right here. And these are just basic bullet points, but then because we've gone through this information, you'll be able to see. So when they talk about around 5,000 years ago, Upuat City was created almost in the exact center of Kemet. The people of ancient Kemet called it Zati, the two protectors, and it belonged to Upuat and Anpu. When the Greeks came to Kemet, they renamed it Lycopolis, or the Wolf City. They kept this name until the Arabic-speaking Muslims named it Asiut, the Arabic version of Zati. Today it's a huge industrial city, but it's still the crossroads of Kemet. Then they talk about Upuat's jackal standard carried as a war banner by the king's army, appears on the very famous Narmer palette, as well as some ceremonial maces with big stone war hammers. From Narmer's reign, he had united the south and the north. So they talk about Upuat Anampu, these two jackals, talking about the north and the south. If you look in the text of ancient Kemet, for example, in the Ta'apet version of the Ptah Imheru, or the Sa'id version of the Ptah Imheru, you'll find that one of the titles, when they talk about the various titles of Asar, one of his titles is Upuat, and he's connected with Upuat opening the sacred land, opening the Tawi, opening the sacred land, the power of the sacred land. Now, Upuat is opener of the way. We talked about him being a scout and going out ahead of the army, ahead of the king, ahead of the king's entourage, to scout out, see where the enemy is. Remember, the enemies are all around us. See them, scout them, and report back so we can know how to move and operate and how to exterminate them, how to eradicate them physically. But then he's also the opener of the way when it comes to going from the physical realm to the death state. If you lived in harmony with order, he opens the way and helps you to make that transition smooth and guides you through the ancestral realm. If you were an enemy, he does open the way to the realm of death by killing you. And he governs that process. And, of course, the jackals, the wolves, the canines, and so forth, when they kill, then they bury the meat, bury the carcass, and then they later come and dig it up. So even they're executing that function of the burial, funerary, mummification piece when you see these jackal-headed divinities operating in that fashion in ancient Kemet. When they're opening the way, and they're talking about the north and the south, one jackal over the north, one jackal over the south, one sob over the north, one sob over the south. One is Upuat, one is Anpu. One is opening the heavens, second pet, the power in the heavens, one is second tali, the power is in the earth. And the one dealing with the earth is Upuat. When they're talking about that whole process of opening the way, and he talked about the center of the city being in the very center of ancient Kemet. One in the north, one governing the north, one governing the south. This is why they talk about Upuat and Anpu governing the winter and the summer solstice. Upuat governing the winter solstice, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, and then Anpu governing the summer solstice, which is around June 21st. Those two different poles, those midpoints. In reality, our year begins in Akhan culture around September. That's the beginning of the year. And as you're going towards March, that's the direct half of the year when you get to the March equinox, the spring equinox, the vernal equinox. But the midway points in between are the winter solstice and the summer solstice. Those are the two polar opposites, and they're governed by the place where the sun stops. It reaches its lowest point in the sky or its highest point in the sky, its highest arc in the sky during the summer solstice, its lowest arc in the sky during the winter solstice. And then once it hits that high point or low point, then it reverses course and then begins to move back towards in the other direction. It's the same thing with somebody going to a certain point, which is the demarcation line between living in the physical world and moving into the ancestral realm, the realm after death. You move to that certain point, and then the cycle moves in another direction. You were going in one direction, living in the physical world, then you hit that gate of death, and then you begin going back to living in the spirit realm and moving back towards the gate of birth. So if you looked at the gate of birth as like 3 o'clock or like sunrise, rising up, you have noon, then you have sunset, then you go through the gate of death, then you're going back into the underworld for the 12 hours of the night, then you're moving back towards that sunrise or that gate of birth. Once again, you're moving back to that beginning point. So when you hit those points where you stop, and then you reverse and start moving back to in the other direction, that's where you have Anpu and Upuat. And Upuat dealing with the second tawi of the power within the earth, talking about the earth, the burial, going underground, and so forth. You look at wolves, they have their dens, they're underground. You have the babies born blind and deaf underground, and they're nursed underground in those dens until they can move forward, and then they can join the hunt within a number of weeks. So that's the beginning and ending point, those turning points of the year. You have the beginning and ending points, but you have the turning points in between the beginning and the halfway point, which is the solstice. The solstice is winter and summer solstice. So this is what it's talking about. So you have a better understanding of that. When they talk about the standard on the Narmer palette, Narmer, the great king that united the north and the south, when you look at the standards as he's walking, he's the king and he has his attendants ahead of him. One of the standards is Upuat, the wolf divinity, and Sabu. Sab means wolf or jackal. Sabu is plural. And then after a while, as you see on this next section, it says an inscription in Sinai Desert between Kemet and modern Israel asked Upuat to open the way to victory. It's not Sekhmet's army. That's incorrect in this particular link. It's Sekhmet's army, which was a king around 4,600 years ago. So it should say second cat. It says, the inscription asked Upuat to open the way. Afurakani. In Akhan, Odwiraman, or Afurakani, to open the way, Afurakani, to victory for second cat's army. During the New Kingdom, 1,000 years later, the Egyptian or Kamal's army's scout division was named Sabu, which is the plural of Sab, meaning the jackals or the canines. In Upuat, we're asking the Obosom in the inscription to open the way for the army. This is the divinity that governs those people who have that inclination. So when you invoke that divinity and that Obosom communicates with you, naturally you'll be moved to move against the enemy, to open the way for the army. You're the scout that goes out and hunts the enemy down. And when you hunt the enemy down and show what can be done, then you open the way for the masses of the people to move in that direction and support the movement that you made as the lone wolf. Even the army's division itself was named after Upuat in his honor. So we invoke this divinity for warfare. And the people who have that divinity that governs their head, they're naturally moving in harmony with that divinity in a war footing. And it's not looked down upon, it's honored. We talked about the honoring of warfare when we talked about Tahuti honoring the people who wage war against the enemies of Ra and Ra'at. Ra and Tahuti honoring Heru Behudet for waging war against the enemy. Ra and Tahuti honoring Sekhmet or Seshima for waging war, massacring the enemy. Ra and Tahuti honoring the men and women who took up weapons of warfare to wage war and kill the enemies of the people and of Ra and Ra'at and so forth. So we talked about that in our previous two broadcasts. And this, once again, is the same concept. We're dealing with Obosom that deal with warfare. You don't have an Obosom of war and it's just talking about your lower nature or the animal self and you're waging war against the animal self. Absolutely not. What we're dealing with is deities. We're dealing with divinities that people would invoke, that people still invoke, that they implore us to invoke them, to guide us in our activities when we wage war. The Obosom does not wage war for us. They empower us to move forward and wage war in an effective fashion so that we can be successful and not create disorder within our own community or ourselves at the same time, as opposed to just jumping out and making mistakes as we're waging war. They guide us towards victory and the empowerment of our community and the sustenance of our community at the same time. So this is what we talk about when we deal with invocation of the Obosom. People will say, well, if the Obosom were so powerful, why didn't they guide you to victory during enslavement? Well, the people who embraced the Obosom were guided to victory during enslavement. Those are the only ones who were guided to victory during enslavement. Whether it was Haiti, whether it's the Maroons in Suriname, the Maroons in Jamaica, the Maroons in Cuba, the Maroon or outlier populations in the southeastern United States and southern United States. Those people like Nat, Okufo Nat Turner, Warrior Nat, guided by the Obosom to wage war against the whites in Arrow Spring and massacred the whites in Arrow Spring because of his movement, because of his resistance movement and others in the same vein that forced the end of enslavement. It is because of individuals like him, males and females, who followed the Obosom and were led to wipe out the whites in Arrow Spring. That's the reason enslavement came to an end. We forced the end of it. So they did their job. Imagine if hundreds of thousands of our people who are on plantations had done the same thing. if they decided we're going on a suicide, quote-unquote, mission, but it's not suicide because we already talked about, we know what happens after death. So this whole notion of a suicide bomber or a suicide mission, we don't have suicide missions. We have divine functions. And when we're led to move, we move. Now, we're not going to meet any negative fate. If we win in the physical world, we wipe the Odwirafo out. We eradicate the enemy who's gunning our people down, who's beating our people with nightsticks, bludgeoning our people, locking our people up for no reason other than they're black, falsifying reports and so forth, walking around scot-free, when our people who are lone wolves are guided by their own cry internally, guided by their own unsamanfo internally. There is no loss. They either win physically and cut down the enemy and hunt the enemy down, or even if they get killed, they take the enemy with them, and they strike fear in the hearts of every enemy that still is left. Because once people get on the same page and they begin to move in the same direction, then you won't have just one lone wolf, just like a tuning fork begins to oscillate and the other tuning fork near it begins to move at the same vibration, the same frequency. When one of the Odwirafo begins to operate, then those who are on the same frequency, same energy complex, they all begin to oscillate at the same frequency. They all begin to be stirred up, and they begin to move. But they're not communicating with one another. They're not communicating with anyone. They're not broadcasting any movements. This is their nature. Just like the lone wolf, this is their nature. This is how they move. And this is why they're so dangerous. And this is why the white snare offspring did not want them to be freed up mentally by embracing their ancestral religion, because they can cause every kind of damage, all kinds of destruction, because you can't stop someone who does not fear Owu, who does not fear death. Well, they may have been concerned about these individuals learning about their ancestral religion. They may have been concerned about that prospect so much that they've created all these fake religions, pseudo-religions, and variations of fake pseudo-religions, whether it's Christianity or Islam or Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, Brahmanism, Buddhism, and so forth, or Moorishism, pseudo-esoteric Christianity, Hermeticism, Kabbalism, Sufism, pseudo-New Age spirituality, all of this nonsense, extraterrestrialism, all these different things to get our people hooked, blacken up foolish doctrine, foolish beliefs, get our people hooked and distracted on this nonsense. Anything in the effort to keep us away from executing our actual function and recognizing that they are the absolute enemy. They have always been so, and they always will be until they become extinct, until we make them extinct. They don't want us focusing on that. And then even when we get away from these fake religions, they try to infiltrate ancestral religion, change the nature of the cosmology, start teaching our culture is about unconditional love and embracing all people and so forth, which is totally inaccurate. It was so fearful that if we embraced our ancestral religion, the last time we did that, we freed ourselves from enslavement. They learned from that. So now they will let you do anything as long as you don't embrace African ancestral religion, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral religion from its authentic expression, because they know that frees you, and you have no fear of death, and you will move according to what your Nsamaf and your Obosom teach you and guide you to do, with no communication with anybody else. They can't stop that. They can't track that. So they will infiltrate the ancestral religion. They have tried to do that, and they've tried to do that for decades. But even that's too late, because the information is getting out. People are now beginning to reconnect with their Nsamafo, and every time someone reconnects with their Nsamafo, they just lost that person. So they have to work on new people and try to prevent new people from getting back onto this information. What they don't understand, that before they can even get to them, as long as you connect with your Nsamafo, then you turn new people on you haven't even met yet, who are not even in your city but are part of your same energy complex. And they begin to oscillate, vibrate at a frequency that you're vibrating on and not even understanding why. That opens the way, that opens the gateway for their Nsamafo to begin to communicate them more in a more profound fashion. This is what's happening now, unfolding wherever our people are in the world. This is why the work of the Nsamafo is so critical. And this is why we're going to continue to do that work. We can free ourselves from every shackle that has been imposed upon us. We have everything we need internally. There are hundreds of thousands of Sacramento, lone wolves in America right now, in the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut community right now. It's time for them to awaken, and they are awakening right now. So we just got a message, and may I say for posting that message. It's true, we have a few minutes left, 18 minutes left in the broadcast. The broadcast actually cuts off online at 11 o'clock, and if you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, which we probably won't have to go into overtime today, but if you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you will call in. The call-in number is 657-383-0635. 657-383-0635. So we just wanted to go through that information. We wanted to show who this Obosom is, where people began to establish ancestral shrines and they began to establish a relationship with their own crop. As we said in our previous broadcast, the only thing stopping forward movement of our people from crushing our enemies is fear. And when you embrace your ancestral religion, and you embrace Nanasom, that which is written into you, that is innate, that you came into the world with, then that fear dissipates instantaneously. And when you no longer have fear of death or fear of anything or anyone, then every decision you make is a sound decision when you're focused on divine order, when you're focused on justice. This is how we move. So what we're going to do is, actually, we can end it here tonight. We'll be back on tomorrow. We'll be back on for NKWA Marketplace. Tomorrow we'll send out a notification for that. Of course, if anybody has any questions, you can post those questions as well. If you have any questions on the phone line, you can hit it before we go out. We just had a couple of announcements. We will be tomorrow and then also next week. But then on the 22nd, which is the following week, for Akampo Nanasom, that particular day, we will not be here, so we won't have a broadcast for that particular day. But then the other 2 days, of course, we will be back on. The winter solstice is actually on the 21st, which is on Sunday, Kwesi, but that Monday we won't be here, so we'll do that. But this is the third part of a trilogy. We had Neverlution versus Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Revolution, Resolution. We had Adebisa, Akodi, Divination, and Warfare. And then we have this broadcast, Upuat, Lone Wolf, God of War, the Hunt, Battle, Justice, and Death. The information contained within this trilogy is enough to do what we need to do. And this is why the Nsamafo directed us to give this information out in the fashion that we gave it out. Share this information, share it widely, share it with your contacts, and witness the awakening that takes place when our people get this information, which is simply a transmission of the information that's been encoded within us by our own Nsamanfo, the Nsamanfo that we all share, the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, which has been encoded within us from birth. This is just a stimulation of that. We have solutions. We have solutions to every issue that we need to address. Share this information. A couple of comments, and then we can wrap up. So there was one specific, is there a way to copy this page? Or you can go to the Blog Talk Radio channel, Odwirafo channel. You can download all of the now 67 broadcasts. You can download all 67. And of course, you can block and paste the few links that we posted in the chat room tonight. And then again, as we said earlier, some of the broadcasts, including this one, we have posted as videos on our YouTube channel. So we're going to continue to post some of those broadcasts so you can get them on the Blog Talk channel, but you can also go to YouTube and get them, and you can share them in that fashion as well. Okay. And we just want to make sure. Another question. So are you saying that there are times when the information we receive should be kept totally silent and quiet, especially if it is related to a form of attack against the enemy? That's exactly what this energy complex for people who are children of this specific Obosom as well as other Obosom. People have natural inclination. They're naturally inclined to move, and they move based on the direction coming from their own Akra. They don't broadcast. They don't speak. They don't share information. We're talking about just like Upuat, Odwiraman, that lone wolf that has been separated from the pack or voluntarily separated from the pack, but they're still a warrior. They're still a hunter. They still exact justice, and they still govern death. So they don't need to talk about anything with anybody. When the Obosom direct them to move, they move. And nobody can predict that. Nobody can stop that. Don't be fooled by this air of invincibility that any group, any governmental agency attempts to force you to accept. There is no invincibility. They cannot stop anyone who's not communicating their intention, especially when you're getting your direction from your Obosom or your Orisha or your Vodou or your Arusi or whatever group you come from, whatever ancestral group you come from, whatever language is used to describe that. Inyamewa, Inyame, or Aminet, Amen, Mawu, and Lisa direct you to engage in any process, and you only are in alignment with that direction. Nobody can stop that. That's what they don't want us to understand. But we're understanding that now. We understand that, and we're going to continue to share that information, and this is what we need to disseminate amongst our people. The only people who have been successful in overthrowing the enemy are the people who engage and embrace their ancestral culture and religion, which is simply ancestral divine order. Inyamewa, Inyame, and Sheshe. That's what divine order is. Our culture is embracing divine order. That's all ancestral religion is. It's the ritual incorporation of law, ritual restoration of divine balance. Ancestral religion, Nana Song. Amamre, or culture, is the divine acceptance or love of order, the law of order, and the divine rejection or hatred of disorder. That's what culture is in our tradition. To embrace divine order and to reject disorder, and of course, its purveyors. That's what our culture is. So when you embrace divine order, you're automatically rejecting disorder. When you embrace your ancestral religion, you're embracing divine order. So when people return to their ancestral religion, they're returning to divine order. And part of divine order is the strengthening of what is naturally created and the destruction, the eradication of disorder and its purveyor. That's what our culture is. That's what our religion is. So, yes, only people who embraced order, meaning embraced our culture, they were able to free themselves in their lifetime. Every other group, every other program, every other philosophy has proven to have failed because no one has been freed as a result of any other program or any other group or any other philosophy. The whites in our spring have kept us distracted on embracing socialism or various blackened up versions of Christianity, Islam, democracy, whatever it is, because they want to make sure that we have no grounding, we have no anchor in reality. As long as we're embracing their nonsense, then they can control our actions, they can predict our actions, they can neutralize everything that we engage in. But when we embrace our ancestral culture, our creativity is limitless. Our capacity to move, restore ourselves, destroy our enemy, and keep it going consistently is unlimited. It's unlimited. Okay, so we got, just wanted to make sure we didn't have any more questions. Okay, and you said, where can we find out info about totems for others? So when you can, whenever you're studying, whether you're studying some information about the Yoruba tradition or Akhan or different things like that, sometimes there'll be some misinformation in the information that's published. Sometimes it will not be, but when you have that fundamental understanding about cosmology, you'll be able to read between the lines. So anything that's published, people who are involved in the culture, they'll talk about different animal totems associated with different orisha. The key is, of course, dealing with your Nsamafo, dealing with your Obosom, and then they will direct you to information or people who have information that's accurate, or at least fundamentally accurate, that you can investigate. There's a great deal of information that needs to be published. There's 90+% of the information that's out specifically with regard to ancestral religion and its practice is inaccurate. So there's a great deal of information that must be published regarding our tradition. It needs to be published by males and females. There needs to be just as many females publishing on ancestral religion, divine law and divine hate, and so forth, as there are males. We need to develop that. So we can have hundreds of books on various aspects of the culture, on truthsery, on health, and so forth. We need to do that. Right now, we don't have an abundance of material that's reliable. So the only information that's out, we have to be able to read between the lines. But the key is you get the real information directly from your Nsamafo, and then you can move forward in a positive fashion. Okay. One of the questions is, so basically, if we are in alignment with our Okra, we will automatically be organized in mass. We must start with the connection to move from there. Well, first, we won't be organized in mass. When you align with your Kra, you'll be in alignment with your Kra and your Nsamafo. If there are other people who are on that same frequency or who are doing the same thing, you're automatically, of course, in alignment with them even before you have met them. And if you need to meet them, your Nsamafo will put you in the path to meet them, just like theirs will put them in the path to meet you. Just like we talked about with regard to law. If you have a penny and you have a bowling ball and you hold them up at the same height and drop them at the same time, they will hit the ground at the same time, notwithstanding the fact that their shape and their size and their weight are totally different, because the law will equalize them and they will fall and hit the ground at the same time. So when you're aligned with law, ma'ah and ma'at, then wherever you are in the world, any other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit individual, and only Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit individuals who are aligned with law as well, you're automatically on the same frequency. you have been equalized at that point. So we don't need to seek unity. That's the last thing we need to seek. We need to seek ma'ah and ma'at. When we embrace and internalize ma'ah and ma'at, unity is instantaneously achieved. It's instantaneously realized. The penny and the bowling ball submit to the law of gravity. They don't seek and have conferences, penny and bowling ball, to say, hey, we need to get together so we can be on the same page. We need to unify because, we've been going in different directions. They don't need to say any of that. As long as they submit to the law, they will hit the ground at the same time because the law will equalize them. When we embrace divine order, which, of course, the expansive pole is law, the contractive pole is hate, then we're instantaneously in harmony with every other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, individual or groups of people who are engaged in the same thing. So then when we come into contact with one another, we're already unified. And so therefore we can make, decisions and organize in a harmonious fashion without a great deal of nonsense. When people seek unity first and say, well, let's forget about our religious differences and let's just seek to be unified. That's like the penny and the bowling ball saying, let's forget about the law of gravity and let's just unify based on the fact that we are two entities trying to fall at the same time. If they reject the law of gravity, they'll be together, but they won't be unified. 20 people getting on the bus in the morning at the same time at 8:30 every morning, going to work and school and so forth, and they see the same people on the bus. They're all together on the bus, but they're not unified. They're not on the same frequency, the same wavelength. So togetherness is not unity. When fools say we just need to come together despite our differences, you're dealing with people who are immature. This comes from the whites and their offspring. We know that Malcolm said that, but that's one of the worst statements he made. Of course, he had been brainwashed by Islam, misguided information. He started trying to come out of that when he was in his late 30s and was cut down before he had a chance to free himself from the nonsense. Some of the idea that came from that nonsense, that centralized idea of being one God, one aim, one destiny, all of that, that one centralization piece comes from Islam, whether Marcus Garvey was influenced by Muslims as well. So, of course, was Malcolm X and other individuals. This whole notion of oneness, we need to centralize, unify. Unity is the top of the line, and that's more important than anything else we possibly do. That comes from that monotheistic, foolish mindset that was forced on our people by the whites and their offspring. Nothing is more important than unity. Your identity is irrelevant. Who you are is irrelevant as long as you unify. Forget about who you are. In reality, you need to embrace who you are. Unity is a result of embracing law, not an effect. It's not central. It's a result. It's not the driving principle. So we have 30 seconds left. You can call 657-383-0635. If you want to listen past 11, 657-383-0635. You only have 15 seconds left. But we're just about done. Please support our Odwirafo.com, our publications, so we can continue this work. ODWIRA.com. Just want to make sure there wasn't another question. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that answered the question. So when we align with our crowd, we won't be automatically organized en masse per se. We'll be on the same frequency with other individuals who are doing the same thing, and then we can, when we connect with one another, when we need to, in situations where we need to do that, then we'll be on the same page, and most of the distractions, most of the nonsense won't even be an issue. It won't even exist. It won't even arise because we're on the same page. As long as we're embracing foolish ideologies, pseudo-religions, ridiculous approaches to life given to us by the whites and our offspring, and we're trying to blacken them up, then we're always going to be in conflict, and we will continue on this path of being dependent upon our oppressors. There's been nobody who freed themselves independence, achieved independence, sovereignty in the real sense, and being able to defend that sovereignty on land that they govern, self-rule, self-governing, and defense of that self-rule that has never taken place since we've been here, except for those individuals in North America, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America who embraced ancestral religion, meaning embraced order, and moved forward in that direction. And when they did that, they freed themselves in their lifetimes during the worst conditions that we could possibly be in chains, on plantation, in a foreign territory, surrounded by the enemy, not knowing what was outside of those plantations because we were on a new continent. And if we could free ourselves in that condition over 150 years ago, why can't we free ourselves now? We can. All we have to do is embrace order, which is what our culture is. And when we do that, then we will move forward and we can do everything we need to do. Obviously, what we have been doing has not worked. And the whites and their offspring understand that, so they would like to perpetuate that impotence. We have returned to destroy that impotence and to reestablish Amaruka nation-building restoration. So, yet I say we thank you for tuning in. We will be back on next week. You can support the work that we're doing through our softcover publications. You can go to our website, ODWIRA.com, Odwirafo.com. Share the information. Download the free books. Go to the Nhoma link, the publications link. Download the free books. Download the free videos, articles, and so forth, broadcasts. All the other links are there as well. For those who would like to be distributors of our publications to generate additional income for yourself or just income for yourself in general, all of that information is on the Nhoma or publications page on our website, ODWIRA.com. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in, and Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's it.